of Johannesburg officials claim they were taken off guard when they came across an old operational municipal gas line that had traces of methane gas. City Manager Floyd Brink stated in a briefing on Friday that specialists on the site had discovered what was thought to be an old Johannesburg gas line. The city has ruled out illegal mining activity as the cause of that blast on Wednesday. For some more clarity and an update on what happened last week in the city of Joburg, we're joined by Kenny Kunene, who is the city's MMC for transportation. MMC, thank you so much for making time for us. So it's now been confirmed that it's gas that caused the blast. What more do you know about this old gas line that was discovered?
I had a briefing before the press conference with the city manager, and everything that he has said is basically the information at our disposal. Remember that this is an ongoing investigation by the experts, and once they are done, which I hope that it should be by next week, they will then be able to give us a full report with specific details. Okay.
So it's fair, though, at this stage to conclude that illegal mining near the city center had nothing to do with the incident?
Indeed. According to the experts, illegal mining is now ruled out as one of the causes or a possible cause.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the lessons that the city has taken from this incident. You deal with a lot with issues around infrastructure in your portfolio, and there have been discussions about the need to seriously maintain our infrastructure, which has been aging. What lessons are we taking from this so that in future we are not able to get to a situation where a blast of this nature could be caused by infrastructure that hasn't been maintained?
Clement, thank you for that question. I think this vindicates me in a way. When I took over as the MMC of Transport, I wrote a detailed report with the team. After being briefed by the team at JRA, the experts, we've got 1,592 bridges. Only 8% are in excellent condition. I have put a business case which I have written to submitted to the MEC of Transport, and I understand she has submitted it to the Minister of Transport. I have also sent the same business case to the President of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, which indicates that our infrastructure is old. Our infrastructure is aged. Our bridges have run beyond their lifespan. They have not been maintained. Our road infrastructure is aged, and it needs to be redone. Some of it needs to be resurfaced. There are sinkholes due to mining and illegal mining. So I have put this case that our infrastructure is aged and our people are at risk. And because maintenance has not been done, before I took over, you would have seen, even today, that JRA, Joburg Roads Agency, works as a 10111, as an ambulance. It responds to a damaged, aged infrastructure. There's a pothole there, they run. There's a bridge that is collapsing, they run. But there are no teams that are maintaining this infrastructure. And I think this could be part of that problem in the city of Johannesburg, where there is no maintenance of infrastructure, there is no revisiting of the state of our infrastructure.
And was there any response? You've stated that case, but what's the plan? How do we fix it? How do we ensure that even institutions like the JRA are not only reactive, but they can be proactive?
I'm trying to be proactive. Unfortunately, the budget that the city is able to give us is not enough to respond to the maintenance. the budget itself is only responding, it's only reactive, because we are continuously fixing the effects of a greater problem. People are talking about potholes. Potholes are just an effect of an aged infrastructure that has got structural problems underneath. You fix a pothole, it comes back. You resurface a road. By the time you get to 3-4 more roads to resurface, that road is damaged. So I put this business case because I believe that we need more budget from the infrastructure grant. We need intervention from the Minister of Transport and the President and the Minister of Public Works, under whom the infrastructure grant sits. But it's been about 4 or 5 months now, 4 months since we have written this business case. I've not had any response from the President. The only response I got from the MEC of Transport, who understands what I presented to her, because I had an opportunity to sit down with her face to face. The response I got from her office is that they have forwarded the business case to the Minister of Transport. I have not gotten any feedback from them. Mm-hmm. But there is another greater lesson that we need to learn from what has happened.
Yeah.
If I may, Clement.
Yes, go ahead.
And I want to say this because a day after the explosion, I went to the hospital, Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital, with the mayor. We were later joined by the MMC of Public Safety. And I got an opportunity to meet with the victims, with those who have been treated in hospital. Yeah. And Clement, some of them could still speak. Only one had a difficulty to speak because there was a mask on her face, and she was being prepared to be taken to the ICU. But I spoke to a gentleman called Sitabele, something like that. And this gentleman related the trauma that he went through. He said when the blast happened, he was close to where the blast took place, and he was walking. He went up in the air, came back, tried to balance with his right arm, which then broke, and his left arm also got affected. I spoke to a lady, Karabo. She was in a taxi that was driving. When the explosion happened, the taxi went up and came back, and another taxi bumped on this one. Both her legs have been broken. There is a lady there, I forgot her name. When the road collapsed, she fell. She slipped and fell into that ditch. Her face is swollen. She was in pain. The doctors said they were going to give her some injection. She was in pain. And I saw a situation where politics sometimes become very dirty, where politics were being played using a disaster. We must learn a lesson from this. In a normal operating country, in a normal run country, a proper run country, when something like this happens, the first citizen of the city will then take center stage, because the teams that must be on the ground as per their mandate and competencies are the teams under the mayor. It is a fact. But we have seen politics playing out using this disaster. That is why when we left the hospital, myself, the mayor, and the MMC of Public Safety, and Newzroom, we then went to meet with the technical team led by the city manager. We were briefed by the experts. We were supposed to have a press conference at 1 o'clock as per the Premier's instruction at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we were supposed to meet at 12 with the Premier and others and brief them. But the press conference was postponed. So we sat in this technical meeting where we were given details of what is happening. And once we were done, I then proposed that, Mayor, can we step back as politicians? Can the city manager lead a technical team? That must now do press conferences, because the people don't want to hear our own assessment or our opinions. The people want to understand technically what has happened. Technically, can it be fixed? Technically, what has been affected by this explosion? Technically, how do you mitigate this? So, and that proposal was received very well, and that is why then at a later stage, the city manager led that technical press conference. But then we were given 3:30 as the time for the press conference of the Premier. When we got to the Mary Fitzgerald at 3 o'clock, the Premier had started the press conference at 2:30. But as the MMCs and the city of Johannesburg, including the mayor, we were given 3:30 as the time of press conference. And you ask yourself, how does such a mistake happen? The Premier could have called the mayor and said that, look, the time has been moved.
Yeah.
But they had the time to inform the media that the press conference is at 2:30. But there was no time to inform the first citizens of Johannesburg that the press conference has been moved to 2:30.
What was the explanation of the Premier?
I beg your pardon?
How did the Premier then explain that? I imagine you had asked him, as the officials from the city of Johannesburg, why he had continued with that briefing without the officials from the city. What was his explanation?
Yes, when we got there, we stood outside. And obviously, we did not brief. So the city manager and the team, including ourselves, did not brief the Premier of what has happened from morning or from last night until the time he did a press conference. And that is why you are saying in the press briefing that he is answering from his own assessment. And when he came out, we were standing outside because we could not go into his press conference when it has already started. And the Premier said he came holding the provincial commissioner by hand of the police. And he said, explain to these people why the time was changed. But nobody informed us. However, I said to the Premier, it's all well and good. But I think, Panya, you could have called us when you got here and see that we are not here. You could have called the mayor. You could have called us. But it's fine. We are going to, the mayor is going to make an announcement that going forward, we are now going to allow the officials, the experts, to now inform the city of Johannesburg residents about the work that is being done, about progress that is being done. We as politicians must now stand back and allow the officials to give factual responses to these issues. We will come in as politicians, as the officials brief us, and when we are invited or when we see a need to do a press conference, as the political accounting officers in the city of Johannesburg. But for now, let us stand back as politicians and allow the officials to do so. When the press conference was announced for 8 o'clock, another incident happened which we must learn from. Councillors of the ANC in ANC Regalia show up at the press conference where it was clearly defined that politicians must not even be at that press conference. They occupy the seats that must be occupied by officials who are going to do a press conference. We can't play politics with the lives of our people. Somebody has lost their life here. So that is a lesson that we must learn as politicians, that we must never use disaster, the pain of our people, to gain cheap political points. We must learn from this thing.
Mr. Kunene, we're just running out of time, and I want to ask about the people you have visited in hospital. You've explained to us how they have been affected and the kind of injuries they've sustained. Are you having discussions as the city about compensation for those that have been injured, but also I heard yesterday some taxi drivers whose vehicles were affected. They've been saying that their cars were damaged and they want to be compensated for that. Is that a conversation you're having as the city?
We haven't had that conversation, to be honest with you. I'm a very truthful person. In the space that I've been in, there's not been any of that compensation. But I believe that psychological, how do you call it? Some therapy is needed because the trauma that these people went through, they just deserve to get support. And I think that the mayor was very concerned also, and he had indicated that he will speak to the MMC of Social Development and the MMC, who is also the MMC of Health, to see what support can we give to the victims that we are able to reach. And another lesson that we must learn, which is what happened at the hospital. We were informed by the hospital that the MEC of Health was coming to the hospital, but there were people from the MEC's office in the boardroom. We went to see them, to ask them, where are other patients? Where are other victims? Which hospital are they in? The officials refused to give us that information, saying we must wait for the MEC. When the MEC is getting a brief, we will then hear. And we said to them, this is the first citizen of the city of Johannesburg. This is the mayor of Johannesburg. They deprived us of that information. We had to go from hospital to hospital based on the list that was provided by the city manager to us to go and look for those casualties. And we are told at Hillbrow they have been discharged. 2 were sent to Charlotte Maxeke. We met them. And we are told at Garden City that the 3 who were there were also discharged. So I'm saying there must be lessons to be learned. We are in a coalition government. We can never play politics. And I'm telling you, if it was a mayor of the ANC, the premier would have behaved differently.
Kenny Kunene.
That is why, as the Patriotic Alliance, we are going around the world to learn how coalitions are sustainable and stable.
All right.
Because we take the citizens of Johannesburg, the citizens of South Africa very seriously as patriots.
Kenny Kunene, the MMC for transportation in the city of Johannesburg. Thank you for making time for us.